Just because someone has more years of experience or more knowledge than you doesn't mean they can't benefit from your help. And most importantly, doesn't mean they don't need your help. This is much more of a CEO way of thinking, to think about how you can be helpful, how you can make yourself useful, even though you aren't the person with the most perfect, polished skill set in the room. And the irony is that once you start thinking like a CEO and thinking in that more determined, unconditional commitment type of way, that's what leads you to eventually become a CEO.
Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jess. I'm a New York Times featured podcast host, a prior McKinsey consultant and executive in the corporate / 9-to-5 world, and a coach for women. I am here to help professional women build confidence, elevate into leadership roles, and develop a super compelling verbal communication style and an unstoppable voice in the room. And today's episode is the beginning of a series that I'm doing called CEO Mindset, CEO Voice. And this series is for you if you want to elevate your verbal communication to a level where you are seen as a thought leader. If you want to stop being viewed as someone who's just there to work really hard and get things done, and you want to start being viewed as someone who's a leader, who is promotable, and who is there to really make a bigger impact in your organization, this is the series for you. And the reason that I'm calling it CEO Mindset, CEO Voice is because so often I see that we can get really fixated on the surface level communication skills and those surface level tweaks and adjustments that will help elevate your verbal communication. And while those tweaks and adjustments are super important, what I find is that if you want to develop a strong reputation as a thought leader and have more of an impact in your role, the most impactful work that you can do is to strengthen your mindset and to start thinking more like a CEO and thinking more like a leader. When you're thinking more like a leader and you're seeing yourself more as a leader, your verbal communication naturally becomes stronger. You start participating more and taking on more of a thought leader role in meetings and conversations. You start to share your ideas and suggestions in ways that are more compelling and persuasive. You start to speak about your work at more of an elevated level. And all of these things flow from the fact that you are viewing yourself as a leader and thinking with the mindset and thought process of a CEO. And in this series, I want to give you a set of mindset tweaks that you can make to get into CEO thinking, to start really thinking like a leader, seeing yourself as a leader, so that your verbal communication organically gets stronger just by way of you shifting your mindset. So the mindset shift that I'm going to be covering in today's episode is the shift from hierarchical thinking to unconditional value creation. And I know that sounds like a mouthful, but I'm going to teach it in a really simple way, and it's all going to make sense once we dive in. And before we dive in, I want to let you know a super important time-sensitive announcement, which is that enrollment is open for my group program, The Art of Speaking Up Academy. This is for you if you are wanting to build lasting, sustainable confidence and you are wanting to become a more confident, impactful voice in the room. If you want to be contributing more, sounding more articulate and polished when you speak, and really developing that reputation as a thought leader because of how solid your verbal communication is, this is the program for you. This program is a curriculum-based, intimate, small group experience taught live by me every week. And I walk you through a simple step-by-step process to help you strengthen your mindset so you are more confident from the inside out and to help you elevate your verbal communication to an executive-friendly level. Enrollment is currently open now through July 2nd, and you can learn more and apply to the next cohort by heading to jessguzikcoaching.com/academy. When you head over to that page, which I will link in the show notes, you'll be able to see all of the details about the Art of Speaking Up Academy, including the curriculum, what we cover every week, who the program is for, and all of the logistics as they relate to the next cohort. If you're ready to take your work deeper, you're ready to say yes to believing that you are capable of more and that you can have a stronger voice in the room, I would love to support you in making that transformation happen. And I cannot wait to read your application. Like I said, head to jessguzikcoaching.com/academy or click the link in the show notes to submit your application and to learn everything that you need to know about the program. I will also drop my contact information in the show notes in case you have questions, and you can feel free to reach out to me. That is why I am doing this CEO Mindset, CEO Voice series, because a huge part of my work and the way that I work with my clients in the Art of Speaking Up Academy is I'm going beneath the surface. Verbal communication and being a strong voice in the room isn't just about tactics, it's about transforming from the inside out. And one of the most powerful ways that you can do that is to start seeing yourself as a leader and thinking more like a CEO. I know that can feel abstract and you might be wondering like, okay, Jess, what does that look like and how do I do that? And in this series, I'm going to give you the how and help you understand how to facilitate this shift within yourself. So today I'm going to be teaching you about a key mindset shift, and that is a shift away from hierarchical thinking. Hierarchical is a really hard word to say, but away from hierarchical thinking and towards unconditional value creation-based thinking. And the way that I want to teach you this is through a really simple but profound example. So here's what I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine that you are interviewing two people to hire to work for you on your team. You are very busy and you now have expanded budget to grow your team. You've got a lot of workload and you're really excited to bring someone on who can help your team cover more and have a bigger impact. Okay, now I want to imagine that one of the interview questions that you are asking your candidates is the following question. You're going to ask them, hey, I want to understand more about your style of interacting in work conversations and meetings. When you and I are attending meetings together, walk me through your thought process in terms of how you'll contribute and help us move the ball forward in those conversations. So you're trying to get a sense of what kind of leadership and presence these potential new hires would bring into work conversations. Now, let's imagine that you are interviewing two people. Let's call those two people Abby and Brenda. So first you interview Abby and you ask her that question. And Abby says, if I'm in a meeting with you, I am not going to contribute anything because you are the expert. You are the boss. You have more years of experience than me. You've been at the company longer than me. So anything that I might know, you already know. I will be there to listen. I will take notes. I will take in everything that's being said. But I'm not going to be adding anything into the conversation because you've got the knowledge and expertise and you're above me on the hierarchy. You know more, so it doesn't make sense for me to participate. Okay, that's what Abby says. Then you interview Brenda. And Brenda says, if I'm in work meetings and conversations with you, I'm going to figure out a way to add value and help. Even though you have more years of experience and you might be more familiar with the inner workings of your company, I want to make sure that I'm using my brain and my past knowledge and thinking to help you and support you in coming up with solutions. So I'm also going to keep my eyes peeled and my mind sharp to help us move towards whatever end goal we are working towards in that meeting or conversation. Okay, that is the example that I wanted to share with you, Abby's answer versus Brenda's answer. Now I want to ask you, who do you want to hire and why? I'm going to walk you through my thought process on this, and then we'll talk about what this means for you and your growth as a leader. My thought process on this is I would be very, very nervous about bringing someone like Abby onto my team, especially when things are really, really busy. Abby has shown me through the way that she answered the question that she has a hierarchical way of thinking. She takes the organizational hierarchy very literally, and she calibrates how much she's going to participate and help in meetings based on whether or not there's someone in the meeting who's higher up on the hierarchy than she is. This makes me feel concerned because even though, yes, Abby is technically correct that I do know more than her and I do have more years of experience than her, even though that's true, I feel concerned because as her leader, my mind is really stretched and my focus is spread across a lot of different places. And so I need my team members bringing focus into those rooms to help me move the ball forward. Just because I have more years of experience than them doesn't mean that there's no potential for them to add value. And in fact, if they're not speaking up and adding value, that's going to put a lot of burden on me as the leader to have to mentally lean in a way that might not be sustainable for me, given how much I have going on the team. Whereas Brenda made it very clear to me that while she's aware of the hierarchy and she respects the hierarchy, that shows a great general interpersonal awareness, she's determined to help. So I know that if I'm in a room with Brenda, even though I know more, she's going to be mentally engaged, which means I'm going to be able to lean on her more, not just for the practical deliverables that she's going to create, but for the thinking and focus that she's going to bring into those rooms to help me as her leader not have to be the only one bringing the high-level thinking and focus. Brenda, unlike Abby, who is stuck in this very hierarchical way of thinking and associates her ability to add value with where she is in the hierarchy, Brenda's way of thinking is very different. Brenda is thinking in terms of unconditional value creation. She's not placing conditions on whether or not she can help and create and add value in a room. Her thought process is that she will find a way to add value unconditionally, even if there are other people in the room who know more than her, even if there are other people in the room who are higher up in the hierarchy. Brenda is determined to find a way to help out regardless of those conditions. So Abby and Brenda illustrate the difference between a hierarchical approach versus an unconditional value creation-based approach. In a hierarchical approach, you assume that the higher up someone is on the hierarchy, the more they know, and therefore you limit your own contributions. Whereas with an unconditional value-based approach, you are determined to add value regardless of outside circumstances. Now, the reason that I'm sharing this example is because when you put yourself in the shoes of the person who's hiring, it's really easy to see why Abby's approach could pose issues to the team's overall impact and productivity. You can really clearly see that when you're in the position of needing help on your team. And yet, so often we fall into hierarchical ways of thinking, and it's super, super common to find yourself in a situation where you're in a work meeting, you're in a room, you're in a conversation, and you're thinking to yourself, everyone in this room has more years of experience and knows more than me. What could I possibly have to share that would be valuable? And because of that, you don't bring as much thought leadership, or maybe you don't bring any thought leadership into that room. Now, when you're in the room, that perspective feels true. But when you put yourself in the position of someone who's hiring Abby versus Brenda, you can see the flaw in that thinking. So what I want to prompt you to explore in today's episode is whether you're thinking more like Abby or whether you're thinking more like Brenda. And most importantly, I want you to make a conscious decision about what style of participation you want to adopt and why. So the two things you want to ask yourself is, when I think about Abby's approach versus Brenda's approach, and I think about that hierarchical way of thinking versus that unconditional value creation-based way of thinking, which one am I doing now and which one do I want to be doing? And if there's a difference between those two, that is your roadmap for the mindset work that is going to help you unlock a more powerful, potent voice in those rooms. And this is the perfect place for me to illustrate the difference between tactical steps versus mindset work. Typically, when someone realizes that they want to be contributing more in rooms, they focus on the tactical piece and they focus on, okay, I need to speak up more. And while that is true, one of the most powerful things you can do to get yourself to speak up more in a way that feels empowering and natural to your personality is to first address the mindset barrier that's getting in the way, and to first build your belief that it is possible and necessary for you to add value, even if you're at the bottom of the hierarchy compared to the other people in the room. As long as you're believing that you can't add value, it's going to feel like an uphill battle to get yourself to participate. But once you can see the ways in which you can and should add value, and not only that, the ways you can see how the leaders in that room actually need you and are depending on you to help them with their thinking, to take some of the burden off of them to have to do all the thinking. Once you truly see that, and once that clicks in your mind, it's going to be much easier then to shift into the tactic of speaking up more, because you will feel a sense of urgency driven by your desire to help them. And one last thing that I want to share with you to really help this click in your mind is an analogy that I think is really useful for situations like this. So have you ever helped a group of friends or just people lift and move a heavy object? It could be anything, like a heavy box, a heavy piece of furniture. I think we've all had times where we're transporting something heavy and we're trying to help out. Now, when you're helping other people carry something heavy, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can give it your all and you can really try to take on part of the load, or you can kind of just like hold it and put your hands on it. But you're thinking in your head like, oh, the other people are strong enough to carry this. Like, I'm not really going to exert myself. So you look like you're helping, but you're not actually helping. So when you're in a meeting room and you tell yourself that you shouldn't participate because other people know more than you or have more experience than you, that's the equivalent to helping other people around you carry a heavy object and thinking in your mind, I'm not going to put any effort into carrying this object. Like, I'm just going to put my hands on it, but I'm not really going to exert myself and help lift some of the weight, because the other people who are carrying this are stronger and more muscular than I am. You can see the flaw in that thinking, right? Just because they're more muscular than you doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to help. And when you don't help, it does put more burden on them, even though they are stronger than you. Likewise, in meetings, just because someone has more years of experience or more knowledge than you doesn't mean they can't benefit from your help. And most importantly, doesn't mean they don't need your help. This is much more of a CEO way of thinking, to think about how you can be helpful, how you can make yourself useful, even though you aren't the person with the most perfect, polished skill set in the room. And the irony is that once you start thinking like a CEO and thinking in that more determined, unconditional commitment type of way, that's what leads you to eventually become a CEO. Because I think we can all look at Abby and Brenda and kind of figure out which one of them is going to land in an executive role faster. Brenda is thinking like an executive and finding ways to be helpful and useful. And ironically, that's going to land her in an executive role faster. So this is the first mindset shift that I wanted to share with you in the CEO Mindset, CEO Voice series. And stay tuned to the podcast because I have more mindset shifts ahead. And if you want to deepen these mindset shifts and work with me in a small group setting to grow your confidence and to shift your identity into the identity of a leader, this is one of the things that I'm going to help you with inside the Art of Speaking Up Academy. And not only that, but we are going to tackle some of the obstacles and barriers that might be preventing you from showing up like a true leader in those rooms. Obstacles and barriers like self-doubt and second-guessing and hesitating and fear of stepping on people's toes. I'm going to help you build the inner strength and resilience to not let those things get in the way of you having the voice you want to have and making the impact that you want to make in the room. If you are ready to do the inner work to grow your confidence and develop that powerful voice, and if you want to learn to speak with finesse and structure and polish, I want to invite you to join me in the next cohort. You can learn everything you need to know by heading to jessguzikcoaching.com/academy or by clicking the link in the show notes. Like I mentioned, I will also drop my contact info in the show notes, and you can feel free to send me a note if you've got questions about the program. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next episode.